They want you small. They want you apologetic. They want you to whisper when you should roar. Every time you achieve something, they expect you to downplay it. Every time you dominate, they demand you call it luck. Every time you outperform, outthink, or outmaneuver someone, there's this suffocating expectation that you'll lower your head, shuffle your feet, and mumble something about how it was really a team effort, or how you're still learning, or how you couldn't have done it without everyone else. This is the great sickness of our time, the pathology of false humility, the religion of the mediocre. And if you have been playing this game, if you have been dimming your light so others don't feel the sting of their own darkness, then you have been participating in your own destruction. You have been a traitor to your own power. You have been kneeling before an altar that worships weakness and calls it virtue. There are two types of people in this world: those who apologize for being strong and those who make no apologies for anything. The first group will tell you they're just being humble, just being considerate, just being a good person. They will smile while they castrate themselves. They will call their cowardice compassion. They will mistake their fear of judgment for moral superiority. These are the people who achieve something remarkable and immediately rush to tell everyone how they don't deserve it, how they were just in the right place at the right time, how really anyone could have done it. These are the people who win and then apologize for winning. The second group understands something that most will never grasp. Strength is not a sin. Excellence is not a crime. Domination is not something to be ashamed of. These are the individuals who walk through life like apex predators in a world of prey animals. They do not apologize for being faster, smarter, or more ruthless. They do not pretend to be equal to those who are clearly beneath them. They do not participate in the great democratic delusion that everyone deserves a trophy. Everyone's opinion matters. Everyone is special. And the herd hates them for it. The masses despise them. Because nothing exposes the weakness of the weak more than the unapologetic strength of the strong. This is what Nietzsche understood when he looked at the moral landscape of his time and saw a wasteland of resentment disguised as righteousness. He saw a world where the slaves had won, where they had successfully convinced everyone that their slave values, their weakness values, their herd values were actually the highest virtues. He saw the sick judging the healthy, the failures judging the successful, the cowards judging the brave. And he understood that this inversion, this moral sickness, had to be diagnosed and destroyed. Today we're going to excavate the psychology of strength. We're going to understand why the world demands you apologize for it. And more importantly, we're going to give you the philosophical ammunition to never, ever bow your head again. The truth that society doesn't want you to know is this: your strength is not an accident. It's not luck. It's not privilege. It's the result of your will to power, your refusal to be mediocre, your willingness to suffer and overcome. And the moment you apologize for it, you validate every piece of resentment that the weak harbor against you. You tell them their bitterness is justified. You tell them their failure is your fault. You participate in their delusion that if only you weren't so strong, they could be strong too. This is the lie at the heart of modern morality. The belief that strength is oppression, that excellence is arrogance, that winning means someone else had to lose. Nietzsche called this slave morality. The morality invented by those who cannot create, who cannot build, who cannot dominate, so instead they create a moral system that makes all of those things evil. They cannot rise, so they demand everyone else descend. But you are not everyone else. You are the one reading these words, because something in you refuses to accept the herd's judgment. Something in you knows that you were not put on this earth to make failures feel better about their failures. You were not designed to shrink so others can feel tall. You were not built to apologize for the fire that burns inside you while they sit in cold darkness. The question is, will you have the courage to stop apologizing? Will you have the strength to be strong? Principle 1. The genealogy of weakness. Worship. You have been taught since childhood that humility is the greatest virtue, that pride is a sin, that boasting is ugly, that if you're truly confident, you won't need to show it. This moral programming runs so deep that most people never question it. They simply accept that being good means being small. But where did this idea come from? Nietzsche asked this question and discovered something dark. He traced the origins of our moral values and found that they were not handed down by gods or discovered through reason. They were invented, created, weaponized by the weak against the strong. In ancient times, the strong defined what was good, the warrior, the noble, the conqueror. These were the models of excellence. Strength was beautiful. Power was admirable. Victory was glorious. Good meant strong, and bad meant weak. Simple, honest, true. But then something shifted. The slaves, the conquered, the weak masses, who could never achieve that strength. They looked at their masters and felt not admiration, but burning resentment. They could not become strong. So instead they performed an extraordinary psychological trick. They inverted the values. They declared that, actually, the strong are evil. The meek shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the poor. The last shall be first. Pride is a sin. Humility is a virtue. This was the slave revolt in morality, and it won. Christianity spread this poison across the Western world. Democracy institutionalized it. Modern progressivism has perfected it. Now we live in a civilization that actively punishes strength, celebrates weakness, and demands that anyone who rises above the herd must immediately apologize for the view. Every time someone succeeds, the mob demands they attribute it to privilege, to luck, to systemic advantages, to anything except their own superior will and capability. Every time someone dominates, they must pretend it was collaborative. Every time someone wins, they must console the losers and pretend the competition was unfair. This is how the weak control the strong. Not through direct confrontation, which they would lose, but through moral guilt, through shame, through the psychological manipulation that says if you don't apologize for your strength, you're a bad person. You're arrogant. You're toxic. You're oppressing others with your mere existence. And most people fall for it. They feel the guilt. They internalize the shame. They begin to believe that their strength is actually a form of violence against the weak. So they apologize. They diminish themselves. They hide their achievements. They pretend to be less than they are, all to avoid being called the one word the modern world considers unforgivable: arrogant. But here's what Nietzsche would tell you. Arrogance is just what the weak call confidence when they see it in others. Pride is just what the mediocre call self-respect when they encounter someone who has it. Boasting is just what failures call honest self-assessment when someone stronger speaks truth. The strong do not owe the weak an apology for being strong. The lion does not apologize to the lamb. The eagle does not bow to the chicken. The wolf does not ask permission from the sheep to hunt. Principle 2. The strength that speaks itself. There's a popular saying that gets weaponized against anyone who displays confidence. If you have to say you're strong, you're not. This is slave morality in its purest form. It's a trap designed to keep the powerful silent about their power. The truth is exactly the opposite. The person who is truly strong has no fear of declaring it. Why would they? They know their strength is real. They have tested it. They have proven it. They have no insecurity about whether they measure up, because they know, without doubt, that they exceed the measure. The person who says real strength doesn't need to announce itself is usually someone with no strength to announce. They're trying to make silence a virtue because they have nothing to say. They're trying to make invisibility noble because they cannot command attention. They're trying to make self-effacement moral because self-assertion would expose how little self they have. Think about it. In nature, the strong advertise. The lion roars. The peacock displays. The wolf marks territory. The bull charges. There is no humility in the natural order. There is only the honest demonstration of power. The creature that can kill you doesn't pretend it can't. That would be insane. But human society has convinced you that this natural honesty is somehow wrong, that you should hide your fangs, that you should pretend to be domesticated, that you should act as if you're on the same level as everyone else, even when you're clearly operating in a different stratosphere. This demand comes from those who benefit from your silence. When you don't speak your strength, others can pretend they're your equal. When you don't demonstrate your superiority, the inferior can delude themselves into thinking there is no hierarchy. When you apologize for outperforming, you allow the underperformers to believe that performance doesn't matter. But performance does matter. Hierarchy is real. Some people are better than others at everything that counts. And the only people who deny this are those on the bottom looking up, desperate to believe that the view from the summit is no better than the view from the valley. Imagine you're in a meeting. You've just solved a problem that's been plaguing the organization for months. You have the solution. You know it's brilliant because you've stress tested it, run the numbers, anticipated the objections. Do you present it with certainty and force, or do you couch it in hesitation and false humility? Well, this is just an idea, and I could be wrong, but maybe we could try. The slave presents with apology. The master presents with authority. The slave invites challenge by showing weakness. The master commands respect by showing strength. And when the master's solution works, when the problem is solved, when the results are undeniable, the slave says, "We did it together," while the master says, "I told you, this would work." One of these people will rise. The other will remain useful but forgettable. When you speak your strength, you do several things simultaneously. You establish your value. You set boundaries. You claim your territory. You signal to others that you are not to be trifled with. You separate yourself from the herd. You give people the choice. Respect me or fear me, but do not mistake me for one of you. The world will call this arrogance. Let them. Arrogance is just the word the impotent use for potency they don't possess. Principle 3. The apology. Industrial complex. Modern culture has built an entire apparatus designed to extract apologies from the strong. It's everywhere. Social media mobs that swarm anyone who dares to display confidence. Corporate environments that punish assertiveness and reward false collaboration. Educational systems that teach children to never claim individual credit. A therapy culture that pathologizes confidence as narcissism. This is not accidental. This is how mediocrity protects itself from excellence, by making excellence illegal. Watch what happens when someone successful speaks honestly about their success. Let's say an entrepreneur says, "I built this company through sheer will and better decision-making than my competitors." Immediately, the response comes, "What about your employees? What about your privilege? What about luck? What about systemic factors? The demand is always the same. Diminish yourself. Redistribute your credit. Apologize for having more than others. Now watch what happens when someone unsuccessful speaks about their failure. They're allowed to blame everything except themselves, the system, society, bad luck, discrimination, anything external. There's no demand that they apologize for their weakness, for their inability to overcome, for being a burden on those who are carrying the weight. The successful must apologize. The unsuccessful must be comforted. This is slave morality institutionalized, and most people comply. They learn the script. They master the performance of false humility. They say things like, "I'm still learning," when they're the expert in the room. They say, "I couldn't have done it without my team," when they were clearly the driving force. They say, "I was just lucky," when they were demonstrably skilled. They perform this ritual self-diminishment because they've been taught that this is what good people do. But here's what they don't realize. Every time you apologize for your strength, you make it easier for the weak to demand more apologies from the strong. You establish the precedent that strength requires justification. You validate the idea that excellence is something to be ashamed of. You participate in a system designed to pull everyone down to the lowest common denominator. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He watched as European culture became increasingly democratic, increasingly egalitarian, increasingly hostile to greatness. He watched as the exceptional were forced to pretend to be average. He watched as the culture of excellence was replaced with the culture of inclusion. And he understood that this was not progress. This was degeneration. This was the sick convincing the healthy that health itself was a disease. The apology industrial complex runs on guilt. It needs you to feel bad about being good. It needs you to feel wrong about being right. It needs you to feel guilty about being capable. Because if you don't feel guilt, you can't be controlled. Think of it as a protection racket. The mob comes to your door and says, "Nice strength you have there." Shame if someone called it toxic masculinity. Shame if someone accused you of privilege. Shame if someone said you made others feel bad. Better apologize. Better show some humility. Better prove you're one of the good ones. And if you pay, if you apologize, if you bow, they'll leave you alone. For now. Until the next time. Until they need another sacrifice. Until they need another tall poppy to cut down. The only way to win this game is to refuse to play, to never apologize, to never explain, to never justify your strength to those who have none. Principle 4. The power of unapologetic presence. When you stop apologizing for your strength, something shifts in how people perceive you. You become dangerous, not in a physical sense necessarily, but in a psychological sense. You become someone who cannot be controlled through shame, someone who has escaped the moral prison that holds everyone else captive. This is terrifying to the herd, because the herd's power is entirely social. It's the power of judgment, of ostracism, of moral condemnation. If you don't care about their judgment, if you don't fear their ostracism, if you don't accept their moral framework, then they have no power over you. You become what Nietzsche called a sovereign individual, someone who creates their own values, someone who answers to no external authority, someone who has achieved what most people never will: psychological independence. Watch what happens in a room when someone with this quality enters. There's an immediate shift in energy. People become more careful with their words, more conscious of their posture, more aware that they're in the presence of someone who will not tolerate disrespect, who will not accept manipulation, who will not pretend to be less than they are to make others comfortable. This is not about being loud or aggressive. Often the most powerfully unapologetic people are quiet. They don't need to prove anything. They simply exist in their strength with absolute certainty, and that certainty is more threatening than any display of force could be. Think of a negotiation. Two people across a table. One has been trained in the rituals of business humility. They hedge. They use softening language. They seek consensus. They worry about being liked. The other sits calmly, states what they want, offers what they're willing to give, and waits. No apology, no explanation, no justification. Just clear, unapologetic communication of their position. Who wins that negotiation? Who walks away with more? The unapologetic presence has several components. First, there's the physical. You occupy space without shrinking. You make eye contact without breaking. You speak at full volume without mumbling. Your body itself refuses to apologize for existing. Second, there's the verbal. You state facts without cushioning them. You disagree without softening. You claim credit without distributing it. You say I when you mean I, not we when you mean I. Third, there's the energetic. You do not absorb other people's discomfort with your strength. When someone feels threatened by your competence, you do not make yourself less competent to ease their anxiety. You let them sit in their inadequacy. You let them feel the gap between you. You let them decide whether to rise or to resent. This is where most people fail. They feel someone's discomfort and immediately try to fix it. They sense someone's envy and rush to diminish themselves. They detect someone's resentment and perform elaborate apologetics for their success. But this is exactly backwards. The discomfort that weak people feel in the presence of strength is the discomfort of truth. They are confronting the reality that they are not as capable, not as strong, not as valuable. This confrontation is actually good for them. It gives them a choice, change, or cope. When you apologize, you remove that choice. You tell them that actually there is no difference between you and them. You're just lucky. You just had advantages. You just caught a break. And they relax back into their weakness, their envy slightly soothed, their motivation to improve completely eliminated. When you don't apologize, you force the confrontation. You make them face the gap. And yes, most of them will choose resentment over growth. Most of them will hate you for showing them their own inadequacy. But that's not your problem. The lion does not concern itself with the opinions of sheep. Principle 5. Suffering as the forge of strength. Here's something the weak will never tell you. Strength is not given. It's forged. It's earned. It's built through suffering, through struggle, through the willingness to endure what others will not endure. And when you apologize for your strength, you dishonor every moment of pain it took to build it. Nietzsche understood this better than almost anyone. His concept of amor fati, love of fate, meant embracing not just the good in life, but the terrible. It meant saying yes to the suffering, yes to the struggle, yes to the moments where you wanted to quit but didn't. Because those moments are where strength is born. Think about what you've endured to get where you are. The failures you learned from. The rejections that hardened you. The betrayals that taught you who to trust. The losses that showed you what matters. The pain that revealed your capacity to endure. Every one of those experiences was a hammer strike against the anvil, shaping you into something stronger, harder, more capable. And now, the world wants you to pretend that this process didn't happen, that your strength is just random, that anyone could be you if circumstances were different, that your pain was wasted because it gave you an unfair advantage over those who suffered less. This is obscene. This is the ultimate insult. To tell someone who has been through hell and emerged stronger that they need to apologize for surviving. To tell someone who has bled for their strength that they need to pretend it was given freely. The weak want you to apologize because they want to believe that strength is not earned. Because if strength is not earned, then their weakness is not their fault. If you succeeded because you worked harder, that means they failed because they didn't. If you became strong through suffering, that means they remained weak because they quit when things got hard. They cannot face this truth. So they create an alternative narrative where your strength is oppression and their weakness is victimhood, where you owe them for having more, where equality means dragging the strong down rather than lifting the weak up. But you know the truth. You know what it cost. You have the scars. You remember the moments where you were breaking but refused to break. You remember the times you were alone, when no one believed in you, when giving up would have been easier than continuing, and you continued anyway. That is not luck. That is not privilege. That is will. That is the will to power in its purest form. The refusal to be defeated by circumstance, by pain, by fear, by the limitations others accept as inevitable. When you apologize for strength that was forged in suffering, you tell every person who is currently in the forge that their pain is meaningless. That even if they endure, even if they overcome, even if they emerge stronger, they'll be expected to pretend it didn't matter, expected to downplay their transformation, expected to apologize for being forged into steel while others remain soft clay. Never do this. Never dishonor your suffering by pretending your strength was unearned. The pain you endured purchased your power. The price was paid in blood, in tears, in sleepless nights, in moments of despair that you fought through. You earned every ounce of strength you possess, and anyone who demands you apologize for it is demanding you betray the person you suffered to become. Principle 6. The predator among sheep. Let's be uncomfortably honest about something. Human society is not, has never been, and will never be equal. There are predators and there are prey. There are hunters and there are the hunted. There are those who take what they want and those who hope someone will give them what they need. You are one or the other. And if you're reading this, if something in these words resonates with something in you, then you are not prey. You are predator. Or at least you have the capacity to be. But society has spent your entire life trying to convince predators that they're the problem, that their instincts are wrong, that their hunger is immoral, that their capacity for violence, for domination, for taking what they want, is something to be ashamed of and suppressed. This is how sheep control wolves, by convincing them that being a wolf is evil. Every time you apologize for your strength, you are a wolf pretending to be a sheep. You are a predator playing prey. You are diluting your nature to fit into a moral framework designed by and for those who exist as food. Harsh? Yes. True? Absolutely. Think about how this plays out in the real world. In business, the ruthless competitor who doesn't apologize for crushing the competition wins. The one who worries about being too aggressive or not collaborative loses market share while composing thoughtful emails about synergy. In relationships, the person who unapologetically states their boundaries and expectations gets respect. The person who apologizes for having standards gets walked over by partners who sense weakness. In leadership, The person who makes hard decisions without agonizing over making everyone happy builds empires. The person who tries to lead through consensus and constant apologetics creates committees that accomplish nothing. The predator does not ask permission. The predator does not apologize for being hungry. The predator does not pretend to be satisfied with scraps when they can take the feast. Now, here's where this gets important. Being a predator does not mean being needlessly cruel. It doesn't mean attacking the weak for sport. True predators are efficient. They take what they need. They eliminate competition. They dominate their territory. But they don't waste energy on unnecessary violence. The sheep want you to believe that not apologizing for your strength means you're a monster who delights in others' suffering. This is projection. The truth is much simpler. You're someone who refuses to handicap yourself for others' comfort. You're someone who plays to win without pretending you're playing for a tie. You're someone who acknowledges the hierarchy instead of pretending it doesn't exist. And this makes you dangerous, because once one predator stops pretending to be a sheep, other predators remember what they are. And the carefully constructed illusion that we're all equal, all the same, all deserving of identical outcomes, regardless of wildly different inputs, that illusion shatters. The moment you stop apologizing, you give others permission to stop apologizing. You break the spell. You expose the lie. You reveal that the emperor has no clothes, that the moral system keeping everyone small is itself a fraud, that strength was never wrong and weakness was never right. This is why they need you to apologize. Your apology isn't for your benefit. It's for theirs. It maintains their world. It preserves their illusions. It allows them to continue believing that they're temporarily embarrassed predators rather than permanent prey. Don't give them that comfort. Be what you are, unapologetically. Principle 7. The creation of your own values. This is where we ascend beyond mere power dynamics into something transcendent. Nietzsche's ultimate vision was not just about being strong. It was about the strong creating new values for humanity, about moving beyond the slave morality that dominates our culture and creating something higher, something nobler, something worthy of human potential. When you stop apologizing for your strength, you take the first step on this path. You exit the moral framework that judges you. You step outside the value system that demands your submission. And in that space outside, you face the most terrifying and liberating question possible. If I don't accept their values, what are my values? Most people never ask this question. They simply inherit the values of their time and culture. They adopt the morality they're given. They judge themselves by standards they didn't choose. They live their entire lives according to rules written by people who are long dead, people who were themselves slaves to even older rules. But you have the opportunity to do something different, to become what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, the overman, the one who overcomes. Not just overcoming external obstacles, but overcoming the internal programming that makes you a slave to other people's judgments. This is where not apologizing becomes a spiritual practice. Every time you refuse to apologize for your strength, you declare, I am the judge of myself. Every time you refuse to diminish yourself for others' comfort, you affirm, I set my own standards. Every time you claim your achievements without distributing credit, you announce, I am the author of my life's meaning. This is terrifying, because it means you can't hide behind external validation anymore. You can't say, society says this is right, so I must be wrong. You can't defer to the crowd's judgment. You can't take comfort in conformity. You stand alone, sovereign, responsible for determining what is valuable, what is good, what is worth pursuing. Most people would rather die than face this responsibility. They would rather remain slaves to someone else's values than create their own. They would rather apologize for their strength than claim the awful freedom of self-determination. But you're not most people. You're the one who kept reading when the words got uncomfortable. You're the one who felt something stir when I said, "You're a predator among sheep." You're the one who knows somewhere deep that you were meant for something more than the herd's approval. So here's what creating your own values looks like in practice. You examine every moral rule you've been given, every should that governs your behavior, every feeling of guilt about being strong, successful, dominant. And you ask, who does this rule serve? Who benefits from my feeling guilty? Who gains when I apologize? Usually you'll find it serves the weak. It benefits the mediocre. It empowers those who want to control you through shame. Then you discard those rules. You reject those values. You walk away from that moral system entirely, and you build something new. Values based not on what protects the weak, but on what celebrates the strong. Not on what limits excellence, but on what unleashes it. Not on equality, but on hierarchy. Not on compassion, but on respect. Not on inclusion, but on merit. These are master values. The values of the noble. The values of those who understand that life is not about comfort, but about growth. Not about preserving what is, but about creating what could be. Not about making everyone equal, but about elevating the exceptional. When you live by these values, apology becomes impossible. Because you're no longer operating in a moral framework where strength requires justification. You're in a framework where strength is its own justification, where power is proof of worth, where domination is the natural order. This is beyond good and evil. This is the realization that those concepts themselves are tools of slave morality, designed to make the strong feel bad about being strong. When you create your own values, you transcend that entire system. You become untouchable by their judgments because you don't recognize their authority to judge. You become dangerous not because you're violent, but because you're free. And free people are always dangerous to systems built on compliance. Principle 8, the eternal return of your strength. Nietzsche posed a thought experiment that cuts to the heart of everything. Imagine that your life, exactly as you've lived it, will repeat eternally. Every moment, every choice, every success and failure, playing out again and again forever. Would you embrace this? Would you say yes to the eternal return of your exact life? Most people would be horrified, because most people are living lives of quiet desperation, lives filled with regret, with apologies, with moments they're ashamed of, with dreams they abandoned, with strength they suppressed. The idea of living that same life eternally would be hell. But now imagine you've lived a life where you never apologized for your strength, where you took what you wanted, where you dominated your domain, where you refused to shrink, where you created your own values and lived by them absolutely, where every moment was an expression of your power, your will, your refusal to be anything less than what you are. Would you embrace the eternal return of that life? Would you say yes to living it over and over forever? If the answer is yes, then you're living correctly. If the answer is no, then you're betraying yourself. You're living according to values that diminish you. You're apologizing for the very things that make life worth living. This is the ultimate test. Not what other people think of you, not whether society approves, not whether you're liked or admired or respected by the herd. The test is, would you choose this life again, exactly as it is, forever? when you stop apologizing for your strength, when you live unapologetically as the powerful being you are, when you create your own values and dominate your existence, then the answer becomes yes. Then life becomes something you would choose to repeat eternally, because you're finally living as yourself, not as what others demand you be. This is amor fati. This is the love of fate. This is saying yes, not just to the good moments, but to all of it. Yes to the struggle. Yes to the suffering. Yes to the moments where you were ruthless. Yes to the times you crushed competition. Yes to your strength and everything you did with it. The person who apologizes for their strength is saying no to life. They're saying, I wish I were weaker so others would be more comfortable. They're saying, I regret being capable. They're saying, I would change myself to fit others' needs. This is nihilism in disguise. This is life negation wrapped in the language of virtue. This is the slave saying, I wish I had never tried to break my chains because now I make the other slaves uncomfortable. But you are not a slave. You are not here to make others comfortable. You are not here to apologize for being alive, for being powerful, for being more than they are. You are here to become what you are capable of becoming, to reach the heights of your potential, to dominate your domain, to create, to destroy, to build, to conquer, to live so fully, so powerfully, so unapologetically that the eternal return of your life would be not a curse, but a blessing. This is what it means to never apologize for your strength. It means living a life you would choose again, forever. You stand at a crossroads. Behind you is the path of apology, of diminishment, of making yourself small, so the herd feels big. That path leads to a life you'll regret, a life of suppressed power and wasted potential, a life that when you're facing death, you'll wish you could change. Ahead of you is the path of unapologetic strength, of claiming your power without asking permission, of creating your own values instead of accepting the slave morality of the masses, of becoming dangerous, sovereign, free. This path is harder. It's lonelier. You'll be hated by those who can't follow, but it leads to a life you'll never regret, a life that when you face death, you'll be ready to live again, and again, and again, forever. The choice is yours. But understand this. Every apology you make for your strength is a step down the wrong path. Every time you diminish yourself for others' comfort, you betray your potential. Every time you pretend to be less than you are, you participate in your own spiritual murder. Nietzsche looked at humanity and saw two futures. One where the last men blink at each other, all equal, all comfortable, all weak, having eliminated all risk and all greatness to create a world of perfect mediocrity. And another where the Übermensch rises, where some humans become more than human, where strength is celebrated and the exceptional are allowed to be exceptional. Which future you create starts with this decision. Will you apologize for your strength? Or will you wield it without guilt, without shame, without the sick need to make the weak feel better about their weakness? They will tell you that not apologizing makes you a bad person. Let them. They will say you're arrogant, narcissistic, toxic. Let them. They will try to shame you back into the cage. Let them try. Because once you've tasted the freedom of living unapologetically, once you've felt the power of owning your strength without guilt, you can never go back. You can never unsee what you've seen. You can never unbecome what you've become. You are now beyond their power, beyond their judgments, beyond their moral system. You have exited the game entirely. You play by different rules now. Your rules. And their opinions matter as much as the lamb's opinion of the lion, which is to say, not at all. This is not a comfortable truth. This is not a message that will make you popular. This is not wisdom that will earn you applause from the crowd. But it is the truth. And the truth is that your strength is not a sin. Your power is not oppression. Your dominance is not cruelty. These are natural expressions of human excellence. These are what happens when someone refuses to accept the limitations the herd imposes. These are what you become when you choose growth over comfort, power over approval, sovereignty over submission. Never apologize for being what you are. Never diminish yourself to fit others' fears. Never betray your strength to comfort their weakness. You were not put on this earth to make failures feel better about failing. You were not designed to shrink into mediocrity for the sake of equality. You were not built to apologize for being alive. You were built to rise, to dominate, to create, to overcome, to become. And the only thing standing between you and that becoming is the apology on your lips. Swallow it. Never speak it. Never think it. Never let it infect your mind with the poison of slave morality. You are strong. Say it. Own it. Live it. Without apology. Without guilt. Without shame. Forever. That is the path. That is the way. That is what it means to be truly alive in a world of the walking dead. Welcome to the other side of morality. Welcome to the space beyond good and evil. Welcome to your strength, unbound. Now go, and never bow your head again.